Chelle Johnson, and I am the founder of Best You Career Advantage and also Colorado Career Connectors. Over the past 8 months, we have brought you amazing speakers like Simone to focus on your job search. How do you play a bigger role in your workforce or within your business? How do you decrease your stress and have better mental fitness? How do you focus on resume writing? How do you get in front of the right leaders and talent acquisition folks? So we bring a series called Behind the Recruitment Curtain, which we are having on September 27th, when I will have the head of military relations for Raytheon Technologies and the head of talent acquisition for Maxwell Corp, which has just been voted one of the fastest growing technology companies in Denver. My past includes being a talent acquisition leader at Comcast and also Lockheed Martin. And I work now one-on-one and in group community coaching, making sure that job seekers and those who want to have professional advancement and really live their best life have the mental fitness and the positive intelligence to do so. I've had over 15 clients land positions in the past 4 months, and the average increase in pay right now is 31% increase. I love connecting great people together, which is why I started Colorado Career Connectors, and we welcome people from all over the country. I know we have folks on the East Coast, one in California, so welcome. Throughout Colorado Career Connectors, I'm going to give you some tips, and we're starting today what's called Shelle's Coaching Corner. And I recently had the opportunity to partner with Second Act Women, Barbara Brooks and Guadalupe Hurt. And we were talking to an audience of women who are over 40. And the most important thing that you as a job seeker or someone who wants to be promoted within their current career, all of the technical skills that you have are amazing, but it's really the soft skills that you bring to the interview, that you bring when you're networking, that you bring when you're doing a stretch assignment, that are going to resonate and catapult you into your next opportunity. Now, on LinkedIn, we did a study of, or they did a study of the top 10 soft skills for 2020 and 2021. So I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about them. And I think they absolutely dovetail perfectly into what Simone is going to be talking about within workplace equity. The first one is grit. The second one, resilience. And the third, inclusivity. Those for me are what I'm always talking to my clients about, that you have to be able to have that flexibility and show how you've been resistant and inclusive of other ages, other people, over other global teams. Communication and dependability are also huge. And these are really the key career boosters for you. It's that, how do you adapt? Or what transferable skills do you have that are adaptable to solve a problem? What adaptability have you shown and resilience have you shown over the past year? What problems have you solved? How have you maintained your mental fitness and your confidence? And how have you helped others do the same? For example, if you're interviewing, a question might be, and this is something that you might want to write down, is describe a situation where you successfully adapted to change. So change management. Anything that you're doing to adapt to change needs adaptability and confidence and that eagerness to learn. Another question that you might get is, what are some ways that you have bridged legacy technology knowledge to meet today's modern technology demands? This might be where you've had to be resilient and learn new technology. I have a client who was a stay-at-home dad for 5 years. He now is in a county position, and he called me the other day and he's like, I have to learn MS Teams and all these different technologies. So keeping up to date on those technologies and leveraging these soft skills and these demands in the workplace are not just needed now, but they're going to be needed in the future. And if you plan to be part of the Great Resignation, make sure that you have these 10 soft skills in your vocabulary, in your branding statements, in your resume, so that you can not only be able to talk about them when you are speaking and networking with folks, but that you're able to give very clear interview answers if these type of soft skill questions come up. So my hope with that is that you've taken a screenshot or you've learned something new about the top 10 skills, and you really think about how you can apply them. I know that Simone will absolutely highlight these for us as we get more into today's topic. We have some free events coming up this week. So if you are looking for insight on resume, you need some assistance with a current resume, please go out to Best You Career Advantage and sign up on my events list. You can also come in and learn the 7 hot topics and most difficult questions for interview intervention and networking. So these are all topics that you as job seekers or those who want to be promoted and plan to be part of the Great Resignation are going to need. So please sign up on my event page. Yvette, if you could put that link in the chat, that would be great. We also wanted you to know, as members of Colorado Career Connectors, we're going to be doing a survey. It's our first survey. We really want to hear from you because we want to know what industries you're coming from, what level of position that you're in. We're going to be branding Colorado Career Connectors with new website, new logo before the end of the year. And we really need your insight. So Yvette will also be providing you with the survey that you can go to just provide us answers to questions. And finally, I want to invite you to Colorado Career Connectors, where I have the head of Maxwell Talents and the head of military relations at Raytheon Technologies coming on September 27th. So as you can see, our community is very busy. We offer lots of webinars, and this is really for you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Simone Ross. Simone is the founder of Simone Ross and the CEO of SDR Events. She is an auctioneer, and she also is the president of Youth United University, where my daughter actually went over the summer to learn more about diversity for middle school kids. As I stated earlier, she's just been named one of the outstanding women in business. She and I share that we are 40 under 40, and she's just an amazing person. We're gonna laugh, we're gonna learn, we're gonna have fun. And Simone, without further ado, you have the floor, and welcome to Colorado Career Connectors.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to everybody that took time out of their day to, I'm always like, what? Somebody wants to actually hear me. So thank you all for taking time out of your afternoon on a Monday so we can just kind of build and learn and have some pretty courageous dialogue together. So I am just filled with gratitude that we can occupy this space for the next few minutes together. So we're talking about a complex subject today. And so this is a bold move, right? We're talking about workforce equity and how we all can play a bigger role in promoting and ensuring that our workplaces are equitable and accessible for everyone that possesses different identities. You already heard about me. And honestly, you probably don't even really care about any of this. So I'm just going to slide past this. So really what we're going to do today together in a short amount of time, right? This is going to be a lot of content, a lot of discussion, and then we're also going to get a little bit interactive. So feel free to engage with me in the chat. Yvette, if you want to maybe call out some stuff, or if anybody sees something when you're like, hold up, stop, we want to dig into that. a little bit more deeply, I will do my best to do that. But we're going to just do kind of a very high level root cause analysis, why we're even having a conversation about the importance of playing a bigger role in workforce equity. We're going to have a little conversation about power structures, power dynamics, dominant culture. These are things that you just have to know, right? If we're going to go out and crusade and advocate for workforce equity. We're going to have a little bit of a toolkit today, too, to be able to have courageous conversations. Heck, right now, we are having a very courageous conversation. And then always my intent when we're having these kinds of dialogues is just ongoing exploration. Ground rules, ground rules, ground rules. I already said we're having a prickly conversation about a very sensitive topic. And really, this is from a space of growth, right? Whenever we talk about workforce equity, I always like to tell people it's not like a systems migration. You know what I'm saying? Like where you download the CSV file, you send it to somebody to scrub the file, and then they fix it if we're doing a software migration or something. That's not it. Are we championing a systemic change? Yes, but it is not a transactional systems migration. This is work that is tied to your personal lens. This is work that is tied to views and beliefs and values. This is work when we're talking about equity that is actually tied to trauma. We carry up to 13 generations of trauma with us. So some of this stuff that we're bringing to this conversation isn't even yours. Ground rules are so important. The biggest ground rule always is just vulnerability. Like I said, we're talking about something intimate. So you have to be okay and comfortable with that vulnerability. Open-mindedness. I do not believe in call out culture. I believe in call in culture. And so we are here to call each other into having an inclusive conversation about inclusivity. That's redundant, but it's true. And then certainly just common respect for everybody's intersectional identities that they possess, the topic, even respect for all of us being in different places in our journeys and trying to understand what equity means and how we champion equity. Always assume positive intent. We're here together because we're kind of a tribe right now. And so we're here to learn and grow and again, have conversation and exploration. Growth mindset is key. And then if you do feel triggered, you probably will feel triggered. There could be a word, there could be a concept or something. Explore the trigger. So don't get mad at Simone because Simone triggered you because we're assuming positive intent, but explore why you're feeling triggered and really take a time to jot down notes or go down that path. So whenever we talk about workforce equity, we have to actually call things what they are. I am big, big, big on calling things what they are. And so we're having these conversations because it starts with race. Race is a social construct in America, and America has constructed this in a very interesting way. And we take this with us in every aspect of our life. Race is not biological. Race is a social construct. So I always like to talk to people about where the heck this even came from. And it's interesting if you look at it, and this is seriously the quick and dirty, right? I could talk to you all about this for hours and days and months. But if you think about the evolution of race in the 16th century, race had nothing to do with skin color. Race was actually defined as a kinship or affiliation. Shakespeare wrote about race. He wasn't writing about skin color. Shakespeare was writing about people that are interested in the same thing. So in the 16th century, we would all be the same race right now on the phone, right? Right now on this, participating in this call, we all have an interest in something and we're developing a kinship. Well, things changed in the 17th and 18th century. And it really was sparked by the rise of social capitalism, sparked by slavery. And it actually started off with the Spanish, as they were starting to acquire Caribbean islands. They used slave labor for economic gain as they were getting silver and gold. Well, the English saw that and they said, well, we're going to go to colonize Virginia to get silver and gold. I always crack up at that because what we know now is, yeah, what, no silver and gold in Virginia. And so when they went to try and get this gold and silver in Virginia, and when they attempted to employ the same workforce model, which was the enslavement of indigenous peoples, they were met with opposition. Yeah, they were. They were met with both opposition, and then the people that they were trying to enslave, they brought them diseases. And so they were like, wait a minute, so there's no gold, there's no silver, and there's essentially an insurrection on our hands. We got to figure out something else to make this place that we are trying to colonize profitable economically. So the profit driver for Virginia that they discovered was tobacco. But guess what? Tobacco, y'all, is not easy to grow. It's not easy at all. And they didn't possess the skill set to be able to effectively grow tobacco. So they needed labor. So they began to enslave people from Africa. Now, I mention this because this is how we are starting to get this system, right? And so I like to have people reframe their thinking that racism is a system. It's kind of the chicken or the egg thing, right? Did the system start first, or was it race? And actually, it was the system of racism that started first, because there were enslaved people that were taken to Virginia to farm and create the economic driver that really is the foundation of the US. And they were taken from Africa. They were enslaved and taken. But then there were also another labor force happening simultaneously, and that was indentured servants. The difference is that it was a different system of work. Indentured servants were here from England on a contract basis. And so they were actually able to work and own land and have a stake in America. Enslaved people did not have that same contractual agreement. We're starting to see how the system was started, especially in the context of work. So this took the world by storm. Enslavement, colonization, this huge economic driver of tobacco. Everyone was talking about it far and wide. And people were watching it. It was inhumane. It was gruesome. It was horrible. And so race was born from creating a why. Why are you taking this group of people and treating them this way when you have indentured servants and you're treating them differently, and you've created a system where they have access to different things contractually? Well, that's where the Enlightenment era comes in, where we actually are starting to put language around race. And really, it was an answer to saying, well, why are you treating these people so badly? And it was a justification for the gruesome horrors of enslaving people. During the Enlightenment era, scientists were classifying everything. They were classifying animals. They were classifying flowers. They were classifying everything to put a why and a what to things. Well, the societal norm of slavery also needed classification, because this was the biggest thing that was happening in society. And so they began creating these classifications based on physical markers. And that is where race was constructed. And that is where the psychology and the dehumanization and the justification of dehumanization and this system was started. And then we began to create more meaning with the philosophers Kant and Hegel, where you see the erasure, right? Where you see, well, we actually don't even talk about the lives that the enslaved people once had, or indigenous people once had. Because again, it was about the justification of the dehumanization of humans for the key economic driver, and slavery, enslavement fueled that. And then again, we began to systemize more things. You had naturalization laws, you had the 3/5 compromise, all of these things to support this system. So I like to lay this foundation for everyone so that we understand that we are so deeply ingrained in a system that we didn't build, but we have learned to live in this system. And it's impossible to think that when we show up for work every day, when we're doing things in community or whatever the case may be, that the ramifications of this system that is so deeply ingrained in us does not come with us everywhere we go. So race is engineered. Wherever we come from, we are the heirs of this illegitimate science, because it's actually not real. It is merely a social construct. And so I like to say prejudice and power and systems is in fact racism. And that is the thing that we are working to create equity for in work. So racism is a system, and I'm going to say that and say that and say that, because there's all these microsystems that are impacted by race that we play in. Racism is the systemic oppression of a racial group for the uplifting and rising or political advantage or economic advantage of another. It's a belief that race is a determinant of human traits and capacities, and that based on a race, that there is a superior race. These pictures that you'll see on your right, when we think about racism, that's what we imagine, typically, when we think about racism. If we take it one step further, when we think about racism in work and the things that happen in work and these isms, We look at these and we say, well, we're expecting these images to play out in the workforce. Well, actually, that's not how it plays out. So we're going to talk about that and get a little bit to some solving for this thing. So what is a business? Whenever we think about a business, it has nothing to do actually with the color of your skin. When you think about what is a business by definition, these are the things we're going to come up with, right? We're going to say a business is where you're dealing in commerce. It's an exchange of goods and services for money. It's an enterprise. It's a professional activity. That is a business. And you all can get super interactive with me and kind of raise your hand in the Zoom. Or does this even resonate when you're like, well, what the heck is a business anyway? Does it resonate in any way, shape, or form as how we would define a business? Yeah, absolutely. So when we're thinking about playing a bigger role in workforce equity, the first thing we have to do is redefine business. Because if you think about the initial definition of business, we never once spoke about inclusivity. We never once actually acknowledged that the root of the economic system was rooted in the enslavement of people for economic gain. That's the first businesses that we know of. We have to be very real about this. So we would be remiss if we did not talk about inclusivity, anti-racism, anti-oppression in the actual definition of business. But look at this. There's nothing that defines business as being a space for this. So we have to redefine business if we're going to play a bigger role in workforce equity. So I took the liberty, because I take all kinds of liberties, of redefining business. And I think business should be defined as an inclusive and anti-racist economic system. And yeah, we do all that other stuff, right? That we know, right? We engage in commercial, industrial, professional activities. That's what we do. But at its core, a business, if we're going to play a bigger role in equity, it has to be inclusive, anti-racist, anti-oppressive, that kind of economic system. Because the first one wasn't none of that. The second thing is, as we redefine business, is that it has to be intersectional teams that are working together, right? We have to create goods and services and products that are accessible to diverse customer bases. Everything in pink I added to it, right? I'm not changing anything drastically, but I also want to call out for us to reimagine and design think business, and that we are missing key definitions in what a business even is. So how can we possibly champion workforce equity if we never even put equity in the definition of a business? I argue that, yeah, I mean, I have an MBA, I have an MA, I have a BA, I have all the stuff that you need to be successful, air quote, by our definition in business. But here's the other thing that we forget when we're telling people that we need all these things on the old resume to be a successful business leader and to successfully start and run and sustain businesses. We never once said that we need to be culturally competent, that we need to understand the role of race and racism in this country and how it built business, and that we need to actually do some anti-racist, anti-oppression business modeling. We tell everybody that you have to know organizational behaviors, organizational theory, strategic management, but we never actually address the elephant in the room. Therefore, the same thing keeps happening over and over and over again because these elements are missing. So I challenge us as business leaders, and as we take on a stronger role in reshaping and taking a role in workforce equity, start by redefining business. So when we think about racism in the workplace, remember that first picture when we say, this is what racism is, right? There were horrifying images of how we imagine racism to be. Racism doesn't look like that in the workplace. The way racism shows up is through microaggressions, right? That are rooted and informed in this lens that we're informing ourselves and in these biases that we've acquired over all of this time that's rooted in these isms, right? Racism in the workplace looks like micro invalidations, micro insults, pet to threat, unconscious bias. And so a lot of business leaders will say, because these things that are happening on the right hand with the big X's in front of them now, because we don't see work like this, racism in the workplace is not happening. Racism in the workplace is absolutely happening. But again, it's informed by these systems, by these beliefs, and how we show up and lead. So when we look at playing a bigger role in workplace equity, the other thing, in addition to redefining business, is accepting that these things are real. And these things happen in the workplace. It could be ageism, it could be sexism, it could be ableism, it could be racism. These things happen and they have severe impacts on our ability to be effective and to run effective businesses. And this, in fact, if these things are happening, this is racism in the workplace. And we've got to do something about it. So what is inclusivity? Inclusivity is about providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who are marginalized. And again, I took you all way back to the 16th century. Marginalization is real, and there are people who have been systemically marginalized. So we have to acknowledge that there are systemic things that have led to the marginalization of people based on some of their intersectional identities. And so championing workforce equity and playing a bigger role is finding how we create these access points for people who have not historically had access points. Inclusivity is not excluding members or participants on the grounds of any of these things: race, gender, class, ableism, sexuality, all of that stuff. Inclusivity is creating an environment where employees feel valued, where they feel that they have access to the same opportunities, but while acknowledging the value that their differences bring and contribute to organizational culture. And that's the action, right? The action is recognizing that we have to actually create this inclusive workplace. The action is understanding the power of intersectionality. The action is ensuring that we are not perpetuating these isms, but that we are diving into policies. We are looking at job descriptions to see if they in fact do have some of these isms that exclude people who have been historically excluded. Are we building things that exclude people? Because we are all playing in supremacy culture. We're all living in supremacy culture, and every day we perpetuate it. And so this is the action, is creating inclusivity. And it is not easy, I will tell you that. So I've been tossing around this word, intersectionality. Oh my gosh, we've been kind of playing tennis with this word. Let's get into intersectionality a little bit. I like intersectionality because, one, Kimberly Crenshaw is a genius. Two, it actually really speaks to a lot of the how. How do we become more inclusive? And a part of that answer in solving for this very complex problem is honoring and recognizing intersectional identities. This was birthed from the feminist movement, where it was, women's equality. Well, what we understood was that none of us are monolithic people. And so within the feminist movement, it left out Black women, because wait a minute, white women had more rights. They were able to starting to break down some of those barriers. And so what that movement excluded was the role of a one up, one down identity and privilege. And so what intersectionality does is it calls in the whole person. We all have intersections, right? It can be your race, it can be your sexual orientation, your gender identity, your nationality, your disability, and the list goes on and on. These are kind of the big five of intersections, but there's a lot of intersections, right? You could have service experience. You could have served in the military. Your age is a part of your intersection. It's areas where you are operating from, in some environments, privilege, in some environments, spaces of oppression. These intersections play in different spaces at different times every single day. Sometimes they yield power and privilege, but it's up to us to recognize those and leverage those to help elevate power and privilege for other people. Sometimes our
I love this whole conversation about intersectionality. We do have one question in the chat that asks, what is anti-racist business modeling?
We will get there.
Awesome. I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Thank you. Nope, I appreciate it. Interrupt me, please. Please interrupt me, but we're going to get there, and we're going to do some anti-racist business modeling. All of you are going to do it. So we'll get there, and hopefully it'll answer the question, and then we can get more deeply into it. So these intersections are actually the things that make us who we are, that make us a whole person. But oftentimes we try to hide these intersections, or we try to mask them, just because we've kind of been taught that we need to hide and mask these unique intersections that bring great value to business. Our responsibility is to recognize intersectionality and include it in the teams we build, the board of directors that we build, the products or services that we build, and the businesses that we build. So workplace equity is really the transparency to cause and effect. Workforce equity is about acknowledging the problem, number one, acknowledging how we got here, acknowledging that these things are very real, that all of us experience, and rebuilding our business to support all of us as we're trying to engage and build businesses and lead better. It's the representation for the same opportunities, right? It's saying that if you have the power and privilege to bring on a contractor relationship, maybe you don't just go to your friend that you've known. Maybe you create a bidding process to where BIPOC people have a greater opportunity to access contracts and business opportunities that's not rooted in the, well, this is my friend, this is my dad's best friend's son, but actually really making sure that we're being deliberate in ensuring that people have a proportional representation for the same opportunities. This can be internal promotions. This can be looking at the job description, right? Is a master's degree really the necessary qualification as you're drafting these job descriptions? Or are these things that we just do all the time because this is what it's always been? A lot of organizations are looking even at the requirements for jobs right now to say there's actually points within the requirements that exclude other people from being able to access the opportunity. It's ensuring that people have equal access to opportunities. It's essentially like what I was just explaining. And it's ensuring that employees or team members feel empowered and level the playing field for every employee. So how do you activate intersectionality in the workplace? This kind of is going to go into anti-racist business modeling, right? Creating a business that is anti-racist. When you're activating intersectionality in the workplace, you need to always ask these questions. Who's been left out? Who's historically been left out of these decisions? This app that you're creating, this event that you're getting ready to sponsor and you're looking for panelists, whatever the case may be. Who's been left out? What identities have not been considered? We're talking about accessibility. We're talking about language. We're talking about lived experiences that are going to enhance your offering, whatever that may be. Then the how. How can more identities be included? I love this quote by Audre Lorde. It says, there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we don't live single issue lives. Here's where it gets really wonky, right? When we go back to our initial definition of what is a business. That definition was so single issue, right? That definition was we're here to make money and that's what we're here to do. Intersectionality acknowledges that we're asking these questions and we're finding how identities can be included. So we're going to break out and you all are going to do a little bit of light intersectional lemonade stand making. We're going to build a business. We're going to start doing some anti-racist business modeling. That means we are creating businesses that are anti-oppressive by considering these questions. So what is like this most simple business, like your first entrepreneurial or experience with business is a lemonade stand? You're like, wait a minute, I can engage in commerce, right? It's the simplest business. You get your lemonade, you set up shop, and you're like, I have a service, a good, I'm going to sell it. Well, I want you all, and I know that this has been fast because we don't have the 3 hours that we usually have to have this kind of robust conversation, but hopefully we've got some good foundational things to where we can break out now and build an intersectional lemonade stand. I want you to take the business model of a lemonade stand. I want you to scrap everything you know about the lemonade stand. I also want you to be able to acknowledge the areas where oppression could live in the business model of a lemonade stand. As you rebuild an inclusive and intersectional lemonade stand, I want you to ask these questions. Who has been excluded from the lemonade stand historically? How? Why? At what cost to the business? I want you to rebuild this business model by asking the question, what identities will this business serve? What are the intersections that I want to make this lemonade stand serve based on our understanding that we've established of intersectionality? I want you to answer the question, how will identities be seen at this business, at my lemonade stand? Accessibility, service, processes, vendor relationships, think about all that stuff. How will identities be seen at this lemonade stand? And then how will you know if you've created something that's intersectional? That's, again, like elevating the voices, amplifying them, figuring out other ways to innovate, and not just making people like force fit into your model. So ask these questions. Who's been historically excluded? What identities will this lemonade stand serve? How will identities be seen? How will you evaluate your success? So we are going to break out for about 10 minutes, and I want you to create an anti-oppressive business that is the lemonade stand.
So for those of you who are on, not on video because you might be eating, it's a very laid back group. Please, we're gonna separate y'all out. Please be as participative as possible. And this also might be a time to talk about if you've had a trigger, how can we help you with that? But this is very interactive and participative. So I'm going to break you out into rooms right now, and we will go from there. Okay, we are opening the rooms, and here you go. And as we get folks back, Simone is going to be wrapping things up for us. Again, this is really hard to do in the time frame, but it's such an important and vital topic, especially as you work more into or go into different workplaces where this is not just a lip service program, it's something that we have to work at changing. So welcome back, everyone. Super excited to have you back. Simone, take it away.
Yes. So how did it go with you all creating a new business model, considering intersectionality and kind of everything we spoke about? How does anybody, maybe at least like one person, because I know we don't have that much time, is anybody dying to share some insights?
I can kind of touch on what our group talked about. I was in a group with Larry and Lisa, and we talked about a lot of things to make that business more inclusive. So we talked about like the health component of it. You know, when we think of a lemonade stand, we first think about how the lemonade is made, and it's traditionally just, you know, sugar, and not everyone can, you know, consume sugar. So having different options for people. We talked about suppliers of the ingredients, you know, instead of like hiring your brother's, you know, friend's company to supply the lemons, you know, look at different organizations, different companies, people of color to supply your ingredients. We also talked about marketing and advertising. You know, sometimes initially we think, yes, we need a website, we need all these fancy apps. Well, our target audience may not use fancy apps. Sometimes you need to go into the community and knock on doors and advertise your business. You know, so we just talked about all the different you know, ways to be more inclusive, from the supplies to get the you know, the supplies we needed to make the lemonade, to the actual recipe for the lemonade, to like marketing the lemonade business.
Yeah. And when I use the term anti-racist or anti-oppression business modeling, that's what that is, right? Because, you know, so often we go back to the programming of how we're programmed to show up in business, the programming of we do this because this is how it's always been done. And so it's really critical that as business leaders, we look at the reason that things have always been done like this, right? It's an ugly story and it's prickly. The reason that things are the way they are, it wasn't ever for inclusivity and equity and for the betterment of all. It was for the betterment of some. And so if we go to the programming of, we are going to do business and build teams and solve problems the way that we've been programmed to solve them, we in fact are doing harm. And so we've got to retrain our brains to think about things differently. And it's hard, right? Because then that's where that internal work comes, right? You have to ask yourself a question. Well, wait, why did I turn this resume down and not call them back? Ooh, that's different. Or why did I go with this contractor as opposed to another one? Or why didn't I even give someone an opportunity? Or why did I build something that really only dominant culture can access or benefit from? And that's where the work gets a little bit hard. So, and I say hard, just it's challenging. You're asking yourself questions and thinking about things differently in ways that we've never thought about it. So take these questions, right? It doesn't have to be a lemonade stand. This was just an exercise to provoke thought about rebuilding business. This was about retraining your brain to make decisions differently. And ask yourself these questions. Who's been left out? What identities will I serve? Will my business serve? Will this, I don't know, department move serve, right? How will identities be seen? How can those intersections be honored? And how will you evaluate your success? So building an anti-oppression business requires leadership, I believe, leadership first of all, right? The fatal flaw I see with businesses right now is they start with culture. And they say, well, we're going to just have this committee and ERG and all will be righted. That's not the case. It requires leadership. It requires operationalizing equity, not just saying that we've got, we've hired some diverse folks. You look this way, you look this way, you look this way. Poof, we've got diversity all as well. But it's actually creating operational systems within the business, and then culture follows, right? Because you can't have a culture that you're creating, but your systems are completely opposite of what your culture is trying to perpetuate. You're doing harm. So an anti-oppression business recognizes and acknowledges systemic racism in the workplace. It is there. It is. We remember where this started? It started with the system. And then race came, but it already started with the systemization of isms in business. That's where it started. An anti-oppression business uncovers and dismantles systems of oppression within the business, right? Is it the job description? Is it your vendor relationships? Is it your performance review process? Is it your access to dollars and resources for education or promotion? Find those systems in the business. Is it the office setup? How your office is even like structurally set up? And an anti-oppression business implements anti-oppressive and anti-racist operations strategies. Do you have an escalation process for issues that are ism-based? Because you can't handle an ism-based issue like you do a slip and fall, where you go to HR and you say, hey, I fell in the parking lot, I have a claim. These are two different things, right? This is head and heart work. It's not transactional. And we always try to make this work so transactional. It is not. That is not what this is. So you have to get your toolkit up, right? Again, leadership, operations, and culture. Acknowledge the presence and reality of supremacy culture. It is there. You do not just have to be white to contribute to supremacy culture. Supremacy culture is what we all live and work in. Uncover where supremacy culture shows up. HR, policies, managing the day-to-day. Rehab your team, right? Call in, not call out, but rehab the leadership team so that they understand that they are also responsible for leading equity. If you are that leader, rehab yourself. Understand that you have a responsibility to drive equity. Model accountability and hold others accountable. Do not laugh at the joke. When you're in a meeting, Mark how many times a woman has an opportunity to comment or does comment, and hold space. Ensure that you've got intersectional teams represented and that you are valuing their opinions and asking them to bring their intersections to work. And ongoing learning, read the book, read the article, listen to the podcast. Operations, evaluate policies and procedures. Find the oppression in your policies and procedures. It is there. Rewrite the oppressive policy to include equity. Challenge systemic barriers to promotion. Is it something in the job description, like I said? Is it a degree that's not really necessary? Is it that there's maybe no apprenticeship or different kinds of educational opportunities internally at your job? Think about all this stuff. Champion supplier and contractor diversity. Support BIPOC businesses. That is a huge deal, and so many companies don't do it. Then there's that culture, right? Where you create no tolerance for racism, where you pass the mic, you elevate the voices, you use that decision matrix that you've made to think about the lemonade stand, intersectional, interdisciplinary inclusion, and again, ongoing learning. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we got through this by one. That's like a first. But let's stay connected. This is how you can find me and all my stuff. I'm Simone D. Ross everywhere, and I know it'll be sent in the follow-ups. If any of you do want to hang out and ask some questions, I have about 5 minutes that I can hang out, no pressure. But thank you, definitely thank you for your time. Thank you for trying some of this stuff on, right? Because these, like I said, these are prickly concepts, and it sometimes isn't natural for us to have this level of overt dialogue, but it's necessary that we do that. So, does anybody have any questions for me?
This is why we brought Simone to Colorado Career Connectors, because connecting and at a deeper level, understanding the history of systemic racism and doing better, asking deeper level questions. This is not transactional work like she talked about. This is something that we, as we go into new roles, are promoted into new leadership opportunities, can bring up in interviews of, ask the question of how the company is promoting and playing a bigger role in workplace equity. If it's important to you and it's a value, take the temperature of the company. Give an example of how you've used this in resilience and what you've done. And do realize these are hard topics. So we will be sending a recording out. We will also be including some of the chat conversation. I thank you so much for joining us today. Simone, thank you. My friend, my sister in humanity. And I really encourage, if any of you have middle schoolers, to look at Youth United University. It happens in the summertime. It's very affordable and accessible. Simone has brought a lot of this, and please also tell your friends about Colorado Career Connectors. We're here to talk about hard topics, to bring it better toward the environment, but we're also here to help you as a job seeker, someone who wants to be promoted. Let your friends know. Simone, thank you. Such an interesting, vital conversation. Chandra, Lisa, Larry, Yvette, Megan, Vanessa, Shannon, Jean, thank you so much for attending. And we wish you a diverse and equitable day.